Warning, the following review has content that people who really love Kick-Ass may find offensive. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, this is, usually Film Conscience, but today I'm actually going to be doing something a little different, because you see, this week we're looking at Kick-Ass, and, this movie had a very different feel to me. It got a very different reaction than movies usually do nowadays. So, I kind of want to change this up a bit. I have a very long rant to share with you, so bear with me, but here's the thing. I'm not going to have the usual voices in my head, Philip and Ringo. They're not going to be here. So the voices in my head are not going to be doing the talking. I want you to do the talking. That's right, and here's how it's going to work. The other day, I posted a note onto Facebook, a very long note, about my reactions to Kick-Ass after some thinking. Well, this movie got a lot of feedback, and that was really interesting, actually, because it got me to think in ways that I didn't think about before, so I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of open it up to even more people. So that's what I'm kind of doing now. I don't know if it'll go over well, but it's just a little experiment I want to try out. So I'm going to be sharing with you this rant. That was a Facebook note, but now it's going to be, you'll see. And I would love it if you send in your thoughts. Here's the email address. If you have any strong opinions to put forth, then please do. Without further ado, here is a review.
After hearing the thunderous, ridiculously overwhelming praise about Kick-Ass, I was ready to sit back in the theater and enjoy a really fun, original comic book movie. While I was watching it, it definitely delivered. The idea of a normal teenage kid deciding to become a superhero, even though he doesn't have any superpowers or abilities, speaks volumes to kids and adults pretty much everywhere. It's truly an excellent premise. It was also very funny, and crazily, maybe too crazily, action-packed. So, why is it that when I left the theater that day, I felt more confused than I've ever felt about a movie? I felt as though I had just gotten off a really intense roller coaster that was really fun while I was riding it, but then I got off feeling sick to my stomach with a terrible headache. Why is it that I actually had no idea what I thought of the film I had just seen? Did I like it? Did I not like it? When I got home, I did some serious pondering. These were my results. When I started the exhausting journey of trying to figure out this movie, I was simply pointing out the movie's technical flaws. There were little things I was thinking about, like the fact that even with an original and somewhat daring plot, they still managed to make it into a blandish Hollywood processed product with little originality in the actual execution of the film. It didn't take me long to realize that these were the least of the problems I had with this movie. Things like character arcs were also really bothering me. I went through the main character's evolutions. Hit Girl's arc is practically non-existent, and whatever does exist doesn't really work in the grand scheme of things. Kick-Ass, the character, does go through an evolution, but even that was a little screwy. For me, the film's biggest flaw, purely from a story standpoint, is that Big Daddy, after losing his wife and almost losing his not-yet-born daughter, decides it would be best to have his 11-year-old daughter fight by his side. I mean, come on! Don't you think he'd be a little overprotective of her? Don't you think a sensible father would try and keep his daughter safe after almost losing her? Nope. Instead, he prevents her from going to school, because really, who needs an education these days, and raises her to be a killing machine. Not only that, but he wishes to put her in constant danger with real-life thugs and villains. Don't worry, though, he's trained her well, so it's all okay. There's no possible way she could be seriously injured. Or die. Now, I think this idea could work infinitely better if she actually did go to school, and her father won't let her fight crime with him. Instead, he could give her self-defense lessons, which are only to be used when she really needs it. Then there could be an added conflict of her wanting to help her dad fight, but he won't let her. Anyone? This wasn't enough for me, though. I was still confused, if not more confused at this point. So, I turned my attention over to the moral issues with this movie. Of course, Hit Girl has been the source of a lot of controversy. She's a foul-mouthed, bloodthirsty 11-year-old girl. How could that not get anyone's attention? Now, I must admit, I think that's a really interesting, unique idea, with a lot of potential to create a layered, complex character. Still, something never sat right with me, but I'll get to that later. There are several moral dilemmas that were presented in this film that I found really interesting that were never explored. The best example being when a kick-ass impersonator is killed because a mob boss mistook him for the real Kick-Ass. I was expecting Kick-Ass to go through a genuine, Batman-esque inner struggle where he was forced to question his actions as a superhero. It never happened. Another example is when, spoiler alert, Kick-Ass and Hit Girl go back to her house after Big Daddy is killed. She sees 2 mugs of hot chocolate on the table from earlier, that her and her father were going to drink when they got back from the mission. It is a huge moment. It was about 10 seconds of her looking at the mugs. Now, this could easily just mean she misses her father, but I thought it was also the idea that those were the only times she truly cared about. This catered to my hope that she would eventually want a real childhood, which one of Big Daddy's cop friends explicitly states, but I digress. It never happens. So then I thought, oh my god, have I just developed an aversion to violence? So I decided I would bring other movies into the mix. In particular, ones that struck similarities. I had picked Kill Bill, Sin City, and The Professional. Or Leon the Professional. Whatever title you have for it. I struggled for a very long time with it. I couldn't figure out the difference between those movies and Kick-Ass. Did this mean I could no longer like those other movies? This was the height of my confusion, by the way. I thought I was going to drown in my distress. At this point, a lot of you may be saying/thinking to yourself, wow, Luke, lighten up. It's just a movie. Well, the point of movies is that they're ultimately a reflection of life, society, or the world. And Kick-Ass seems to be a reflection of gun-wielding, bloodthirsty psychopaths. Let me just say, this isn't a bad thing. If you're writing Network. Yes, for some reason I thought of Network, which is an excellent film, but there's a big difference between Kick-Ass and Network, and it's one word. Catharsis. That's when it hit me. That's when I finally understood why I was so stressed about this movie. Catharsis, for those of you who don't know, is a Greek word that means cleansing. In storytelling terms, it references the point in the story where we have an emotional release, which usually takes place right after the climax of the film. This makes a film more self-contained, and that's okay. With a movie like Network, it doesn't have that emotional release, which forces you to look at yourself and everything around you and ask questions. Kick-Ass was a movie that did have catharsis, and that was the main thing that never sat right with me, but I'll get back to that in a minute. After thinking about all this, I went back to the movies like Kill Bill, Sin City, and Leon, Anyway, and it all made sense. All the protagonists in those movies are anti-heroes. This doesn't make them unlikable characters, however, because they are established as people who go by a different moral code than the vast majority of the world. Because of this, we can quickly accept that we're entering into a world that's not necessarily our own, and enjoy it. So, are you ready for my final statement about Kick-Ass? Here it is. I hate it. The reason why? 2 reasons. 1, because our protagonists are not anti-heroes. They are a teenager and an 11-year-old girl who never give a second thought to the fact that they've killed several people, and after it's all said and done, they brush it off like it never happened. There are no revelations, nothing. These are our heroes, the good guys. The second reason is that we are supposed to be happy about this. How do I know this? We are given catharsis. We aren't forced to dwell on the many moral and ethical dilemmas the movie addresses, because the movie tells us it's all okay. Kick-Ass proves to me that we live in a society where no one gives any thought to the value of human life anymore. It proves that we're all incredibly desensitized, and we are forced to believe that senselessly killing bad guys is the same thing as justice. It sickens me. There are probably still some people watching this that think I'm putting too much thought into a fun superhero movie, that I need to turn my brain off and enjoy the ride. But when you do that, your subconscious takes over, and when that happens, you become brainwashed. Just like what Big Daddy did to his daughter, just like what Kick-Ass is doing to North America.
There it is. Now, I have to point out something, because a lot of you may be going, whoa, okay. By the time I wrote that, I was a little angry and kind of really passionate. So, especially with the ending, I think I went a little extreme, so sorry about that. But, reflecting on it now, even with all the great feedback I've been receiving, I do stand by my major points. But yeah, please send in your thoughts if there was something you really objected to or something you want to add to. Please do. I have not actually read the comics, so if you'd like to talk about the comic, which is totally fine, please somehow make it relate to the movie, like, you know, their relationship, because a lot of people on Facebook are readers of the comic, and they were bringing up a lot of great points, and they were bringing it to the movie so I could make sense of it. So here's the email address again, and I cannot wait to hear from you. And at some point then I'm going to be posting a video bringing up some of the great points you people had to offer. So we'll see how this goes. It may not work, it may be weird, but you know, there's always a first time for everything. So have a good night. This has been Film Conscience, where you guys are going to be doing the talking.